we put in the Nebo was this fabric is incredibly unique. It's so unique and so hard to weave it as the way that they're doing, which I would maybe describe it as like the tolerances are so tight and the weaving is so tight that our partners that are making this fabric for us, they're making it in Japan. They can't even duplicate their own results at their own fabric mill. That's not this one. So it's their highest level weavers essentially and highest oldest fabric mill that's able to create this, and its tight tolerances and ability to do what it does. And what came from this was a piece that blocks the wind, is super breathable still, which sounds counterintuitive. I don't know how better to say that.
Well, what it comes down to is, if we think about some of those methods that I talked about, those all address certain priorities, right? But in terms of overall objective of the windbreaker is we wanted a windbreaker that we can move in for extended periods of time. That narrows down, or that almost self-identifies certain priorities or requirements of fabric type or of fabric construction type, because we've identified it's got to block wind, but we didn't say it has to block all wind. It has to breathe. Now those two go together. Like if it's going to breathe, then it has to not block 100% of wind. We also want it to be as lightweight as possible while meeting the durability requirements that we have, which means we need to be able to hike in this thing all day. So that now eliminates like the lightest weight fabrics out there. So we're kind of shaping this balance of all these priorities. And for an active windbreaker, it absolutely has to breathe. And I don't mean breathe in terms of like a waterproof breathable membrane. And I also don't mean breathe in terms of some of the, let's just say, branded wind membranes out there. We need to breathe more than that. And we need to weigh less than those laminate wind fabrics out there. And, in testing, one of the things we quickly identified is we don't like hiking with plastic bags on our bodies. We don't like hiking with really slippery fabrics that don't interface well with other layers in our system or other pieces of gear that we're using, like, say, a backpack. So all of those factors, there's all these variables that kind of narrow down like what we actually have to get in this fabric. And then that was like you were describing with this fabric, and it was just so great that we ended up where we did. And it just so happens that this fabric can only be made in one mill in Japan, like Tayson said, because the tolerances of the process of achieving what we need in this fabric, they're so tight that like you said, they can't even essentially just take the same recipe or set of instructions and just transfer it over to another mill of their own company, because it'll be out of tolerance.
They've tried
for a few yards. It might meet the spec, but for a few yards of the roll, it might not. And that's that combination of the yarn manufacturing, the weaving process, and the application of that coating that I was talking about. All of those three things are so tightly dialed in that they can't or won't or both. They won't and can't make it anywhere else. And so that's kind of the fabric. That's the 20D ripstop nylon. That sounds very basic, but it's really fun to kind of talk about the details behind it, because we had some very negative experiences with some of those other fabric types, and some of the feedback I've gotten from people that have tested this for us is an immediate feeling of a positive reaction as soon as the piece is put on. It doesn't feel sticky, clammy. It feels breathable. It has a great feel.
So two points there. One, we had an interesting conversation with the fabric mill and, regarding this, but regarding other things we're doing here at Outdoor Vitals, where they're saying, we're essentially getting into this realm of only really specialty manufacturers like us essentially are using this level of fabric because of costing. At a mass scale, at a typical retail brand, even the highest end retail brands, this stuff can start to get overly costly even for them. And so it's really interesting because this is a very, very premium fabric that can't really be replicated and is costly. But, thankfully, again, at Outdoor Vitals, we do things different. We sell direct, and it allows us to bring stuff like this to market.